Hello all, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video I want to talk to you about what is an associate professor and whether associate professors actually have tenure and whether they take graduate students. So if you don't know me, I'm an associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. So I created this sort of sharing economy editing website. That's what reciprocity.com is. You can get feedback on your work. And then doing all these YouTube videos. And there's actually a pretty big blog now if you go to blog.reciprocity.com. All right, so what is an associate professor? So associate professors tend to have tenure at most institutions. Now I say tend to have tenure at most institutions because not all do. There are a lot of, there's some institutions where you don't have tenure at that particular school. So what does it mean to have tenure at that particular school? It means that you're just basically hired full-time for the rest of your life at the university. It doesn't mean that you can't get fired. It doesn't mean if you do something that's silly that that you definitely can get fired and stuff like that. But it is a lifelong contract at that particular university that they hire you on, right? So what is the difference between tenure and promotion? Well, tenure is that sort of lifelong contract. And then promotion, it is where you can move up in the different ranks at your university, right? So there's 3 different ranks. There's an assistant professor, there's an associate professor, and then there's a full professor. So associate's somewhere in the middle, which basically means associate professor basically means that you have some level of notoriety within the community and people understand who you are, and you're on the rise to become a stellar scholar in that particular community, right? So that's the important thing to think about. And eventually they're hoping that you're going to become a world-renowned scholar. And at some institutions, it's different in terms of where their cutoff is. Some of them are really high and it's really difficult to get tenure and become an associate professor. And some places it's not. So at a lot of universities, what they'll do when they hire somebody on from outside of their university, they'll bring them on to the university and they will hire them as an associate professor without tenure. And then that way, the following year, they can judge whether that particular individual gets tenure or not. And the reason why they do that, it's just kind of like, a temporary probationary period, except for it's going to be like a year or 2 before you actually go up and get that. And that's kind of normal at a lot of different institutions. And there's going to be sort of variability, you can negotiate for that kind of stuff. So just be well aware of that and what that actually means, right? So now do associate professors take graduate students? Absolutely, they do. At my institution and at many different institutions, basically you start working with a graduate student right from the get-go. And that's not surprising. And so what sometimes ends up happening at a lot of places and at a lot of institutions, you don't work with the graduate students until you've sort of built up a base of your own research. And the reason is that they're just giving you time to work on that. And so there's just a little bit of variability in terms of what they're doing because, working with graduate students, even though it's amazing, it's fun, it's exciting, it tends to be a little bit more challenging and it takes a lot longer than you think it does in terms of, the amount of resources that it takes to actually work with somebody. It is quite time consuming and, it does slow you down in terms of your research productivity. Maybe in the short term, it definitely does do that. In the long term, maybe it's sort of variable in terms of whether it does and doesn't, right? So hopefully it does improve your research productivity in the long run. Who knows in terms of what that is. It just depends on a lot of what your model is in terms of how you're sort of managing the process. But, it does slow you down because for every graduate student that you get that is a rock star, it's like in any population of human resources and any population of workers. for every one person that is a rock star to work with, there's 10 others that are, challenging to work with, or they have individual challenges to work with. So just imagine that, or think about that before you go and work with somebody. It just really varies. And in a lot of institutions, you're definitely going to be able to work with different graduate students, and the expectation is there to do that, right from an assistant to associate to full professor. It's because it's part of your job, right? So that is a really important thing. Now, in terms of, would you actually work with associate professors in terms of what you're thinking of if you're a graduate student? You might want to consider sort of weighing the consequences in terms of working with an associate professor versus a full professor and assistant professor. And usually you will see assistant professors being really hungry in the sense that they want to do a lot of research, and that is totally normal. But the problem is they don't have the experience or credibility and things like that. But on the flip side, the full professor, that they're really good at research, they're world renowned, everybody knows who they are. And the trouble is that they might not have time for you because they have many different things that are competing on the other side. Associate professor is kind of in the middle, and so it's a little challenging with that. And what ends up happening in terms of becoming an associate professor, you have to actually spend, 5 to 10 years, 5 to 15 years or so of being at the assistant professor level. And it really just depends on the institution and who you are and what you've done and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, the associate professor level, you can be in that range, probably for 5 to 10 years as well. And then eventually it becomes a little more challenging to become a full professor at that point. But, the reason is just you've moved on to different things, and, the credentialing that you get to become a full professor, which is almost always research at most institutions. Teaching does matter. However, to the extent of how much teaching that is really varies at institution to institution. You have to really sort of judge on what that is. So, at a Harvard Business School, they're going to sort of weigh both of them really importantly. But, at another sort of really strictly research institution, they're going to really focus on research and really and sort of look at that fondly. So just imagine what that is, right? So you're really thinking about balancing in terms of the research and teaching at that moment, in terms of what you are doing in terms of becoming a full professor. And if that's you, in thinking about, moving on to becoming a full professor, you have to really think about where you're situated and what the university values. At my institution, it really, really values research. It really, really does. And so anything that is not research oriented is not going to be weighted as much. And so tenure, the promotion process really depends on, your research productivity, however that is and what that looks like. And so that's going to be really normal, I think, at most institutions that are doing this kind of stuff, unless you're really kind of more of a teaching institution. They value teaching. And so you have to look at what they're doing and how they sort of situate in where they are, right? So that's what an associate professor is. It's kind of a middle ground. You've proven yourself. People know who you are, but you're not quite there in terms of becoming a full professor. And it just takes time. Some people rocket through and become a full professor very quickly. And most people actually take some time becoming a full professor. And it really varies at the institution, but you have to have international acclaim. People just really need to know who you are at many different places, and you must be well liked. And really a good criteria of that is there going to be other universities that are going to pick you up or want to take you away from the research institution that you're at, right? So if you are at one research institution, there's a comparable or better institution that wants to hire you, well, that's a really good signal that you're doing all the right things. And so that's what you want to look at in terms of those signals. It's kind of the marketplace, right? And the marketplace is really important in terms of judging where you situate yourself in the academic community. So hopefully you like this video. What is an associate professor? I had no idea what it was when I first started out. For the first couple of years, I was like, I'm just kind of bumbling around, but you kind of learn these things. So I thought I'd help you out and, just kind of tell you kind of these things as kind of a normal person. Just having a conversation with you. Nobody else is doing this kind of stuff. So I wanted to just help you out. All right. So there you have it. That's what an associate professor is. They do have tenure. Most institutions, it's pretty normal. Tenure and promotion happen at the same time. And then the other thing is that, they do take graduate students. So you can reach out to them if you are a graduate student as well. All right, so give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.